Welcome. My name is Peter Strong. I'm a professional psychotherapist and I offer online therapy via Skype for help with anxiety and depression and addictions and other common psychological and emotional problems, including agoraphobia. So if you're looking for online help for agoraphobia and you'd like to speak to an online therapist to get the help that you need to overcome agoraphobia, then I invite you to contact me and send me an email and tell me more about yourself and what you've tried so far and any questions you may have. And if you'd like, we can schedule a Skype therapy session. So online therapy is very good and often very necessary if you're struggling with agoraphobia because it's so difficult to leave home. I work a lot with homebound agoraphobics and I help them overcome this very limiting anxiety disorder. It is entirely possible to break free from agoraphobia. You just have to approach it in the right way, in a strategic and focused way, to overcome the anxiety habit. So anxiety is best thought of as a habit rather than as an illness or a disorder. You have to work with that habit consciously. That's the key ingredient. And so I've developed a system based on mindfulness training and mindfulness therapy, which is about developing this conscious relationship with your anxiety habits. This is what makes the difference. So the process of recovery from agoraphobia is going to involve exposure therapy, but mindfulness-based exposure therapy, as opposed to just straight exposure. Sometimes simple repeated exposures will desensitize you to the anxiety reactions, but often it simply makes it worse because it's not being done in a strategic way. So you need to really work at a strategic level, not just repeated exposures, but exposures combined with training. And that's what I offer in the mindfulness-based exposure therapy approach. So here we will learn how to develop a series of exposure challenges and then train effectively for each exposure challenge on your list. The way we do that is by developing our skills of mindfulness meditation so that you can learn how to meditate on the anxiety habit, on those habitual anxiety reactions that get triggered and that you can identify in each of your exposure challenges. So we meditate on each challenge. This means that we play it through in the mind. We imagine doing that challenge before we do the challenge. We play it through in the mind. We watch for the anxiety reactions, and particularly the reactive thoughts that accompany that anxiety reaction. Now, the real problem is simply that those reactions are habitual. They simply arise in a conditioned manner without any conscious intervention. But when we are meditating on our anxiety, we are now bringing in that element of conscious choice. Consciousness is extremely important for changing habits. So we look at those reactive habits, and then we start to change our relationship to them, in which we strengthen our true identity as an observer, observing the anxiety and observing those thoughts as objects in the mind. So we're breaking the habitual pattern of blind reactive identification with the anxiety and its thoughts. This is what really starts to make the difference. This is part of training mindfully with your anxiety. So we play through the challenge in our mind, we look for the anxiety reactions, and then we change our relationship to being the observer, so that we don't just fall into the blind reactive habits. We can then also develop this internal relationship with our anxiety and our fear by bringing in the element of compassion. That's also a natural quality of your true self, your observer self, the one that is able to observe the anxiety. We bring in this quality of friendliness and compassion. In many ways, it's like becoming a parent to our anxiety and seeing the anxiety as a child. And it has many similarities to a child in that it is limited in its conscious awareness, it's limited in its resources, it hasn't learned how to overcome its own suffering. But your true self is like the parent. It knows how to heal and be compassionate towards emotional suffering. It's quite natural. It's a natural part of your larger self, your higher self, what we call your true self in mindfulness therapy. So we bring that true self to the aid of the little self, the anxiety reaction. This internal compassion, learning to develop a compassionate relationship with your anxiety, accelerates the rate of healing tremendously. So the first step is to build an internal conscious relationship with the anxiety, so you don't simply fall into the trap of identifying with it and becoming the anxiety. And the second step is to develop this internal compassion. It is the essence of learning to love yourself, which is so much needed. It's so central. But rather than talking about that at some abstract level, we are learning to do it in a very practical, direct way. Learning to love yourself is abstract. Learning to love that anxiety reaction is concrete. That's something we can do. It's an object. It's like a child. Learning to love is somewhat meaningless, but learning to respond skillfully to a child that is in pain and helping it heal, that's the direct, real expression of love. So that's what we are training to do with our anxiety. And we do this before we do the exposure challenge. So we're really neutralizing those anxiety reactions ahead of time through this training, this mindful training, which we do before we do each challenge. Then when you do the live challenge, this training will come into effect and will neutralize that anxiety so it doesn't arise during the challenge. If it does arise, then we might want to meditate on that anxiety after the challenge. And in the same way, we strengthen these internal pathways that heal that anxiety and neutralize it. And then we might repeat that same challenge again. We keep doing the exposure challenges and training with the anxiety reactions over and over again until we can feel completely free from the anxiety in that particular challenge situation. Then we move on to the next challenge on our list. And so we very methodically work through our list of exposure challenges, gaining more and more confidence in the process and building that true self, building that identity as your true self that does not react with anxiety, but rather responds in a way that heals anxiety. So this is the way that we train ourselves out of the anxiety habit. If you'd like to learn more about the mindfulness approach to healing agoraphobia, then do please contact me and let's schedule a Skype therapy session. Most people see rapid improvements once you start applying these mindfulness techniques that I'll be teaching you during those Skype sessions. So if you're looking for online help for agoraphobia, do please contact me and let's get started. Thank you.